Shocking revelation. The biblical truth behind the ongoing conflict between Iran and Israel. Few knew what truly happened that night. Under a blood-red moon, shadows fell across the ancient hills of Jerusalem. Whispers echoed through the marketplace, tales of prophecies long forgotten, and men clutched their swords tighter. Could it be that the fate of nations hung in the balance? In the year 70 AD, Jerusalem had faced its darkest hour. Yet here we are, generations later, and the scars still bleed. Take a moment to visualize the scene. Stone walls, crumbling yet defiant, stood like sentinels guarding the heart of a city soaked in history. The air was thick with fear as dark clouds loomed overhead, blocking out the stars. A fragile peace hung by a thread. Then, from the depths of the valley, came a sounding, unsettling rumble that seemed to resonate in the very bones of those who heard it. What was this ominous omen? Some claimed it was the roar of ancient warriors, rising from the grave, while others believed it was the very earth warning them of upheaval. Around the corner, a woman with trembling hands clutched a scroll, her eyes wide with realization. Had she found something so sacred that the heavens themselves trembled in fear? As the first flash of lightning split the night sky, it illuminated the rugged faces of the onlookers. Confusion danced in their eyes. Could these events be tied to the stories of old? Tales of giants, cities burning, and blood spilled on sacred grounds resurfaced in murmurs. Was the chaos merely fate's hand, or was it part of a divine script written centuries ago? In that electric moment, as people caught their breath, a figure stepped forward. Dressed in a simple robe, he raised his hands, silencing the crowd. People leaned in, hearts racing as he spoke of lost covenants and war drums echoing through time. Was he a prophet? A madman? The tension thickened. Uncertainty cloaked every word. And then, just as quickly as it had begun, the storm rolled past, leaving a stillness that pressed down like a weight. Puzzled glances exchanged among those who dared to dream of understanding. What secrets lay hidden beneath the surface of these unfolding calamities? Was it chance, or was there destiny entwined in a larger tale, lost in the ages? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As the silence enveloped the marketplace, the figure in the robe lowered his arms, allowing the whispers to swell once more. The crowd, drawn in by a curiosity neither could define nor escape, strained to catch the remnants of his message. He spoke not just with words but with a fervor that ignited something deep within every listener. A pulse of ancient tales surged through the gathering, tugging at the fabrics of their lives. Listen, he implored, his voice rising above the assembled multitude. You live on the cusp of prophecy. What has been foretold is not a pleasant tale, but rather a trial by fire, one that has echoed through generations. Each word resonated like a bell, awakening fears long buried and hopes scarcely acknowledged. The woman with the scroll sensed that she held not merely parchment but the weight of destiny itself. In hushed tones, an elder in the crowd raised a question, wisdom etched deep in his furrowed brow. What does this mean for us? Are we but players in a grand design, or does our choice matter? The figure paused, contemplating the weight of the elder's inquiry. Ah, the essence of free will, he replied, his eyes piercing into the hearts of those gathered. Though the paths before you may appear set, the choices of your hearts can bend the arc of the world. Remember, even the smallest spark can rekindle a flame long thought extinguished. Your faith, your actions, these are the keys to understanding. Across the avenue, the palace towers shimmered with a dull glow, their stones heavy with history. For centuries, rulers had claimed dominion. Yet here stood a multitude feeling unmoored, more lost than ever. The marketplace, once filled with laughter and commerce, now echoed with a somber uncertainty. A child, barely aware of the weight of conversations around him, pulled on his mother's robe. "Why do they talk about fire and doom, Mama? Is it true?" His innocent gaze cut through the tension, reminding everyone present of the frailty of life. The woman with the scroll, inspired by the child's purity, stepped forward. In every story of ruin, there lies a glimmer of hope. Hidden in prophecies are the embers of deliverance. But those embers require kindling. She held the scroll high, a symbol of faith. When we seek understanding and act with love, we can reshape our fate. Amid the flickering torchlight, a sense of unity began to knit through the gathered souls. Whether they were merchants, warriors, or seekers, they all shared a consciousness, an urgency to confront the shadows creeping ever closer. The ominous rumbling returned, a reminder that external forces were already in motion. As the figures of fate danced on the periphery, those in the crowd caught glimpses of their own destinies entwining with the ancient stories. Would they rise to the occasion or falter beneath the weight? With the tension thickening like the air before a storm, hearts collectively held their breath. What awaits them in the times to come? Would the sacred scroll reveal its ultimate truth, or would its contents only add to the kaleidoscope of confusion? As the figure in the robe stepped back, the crowd turned towards one another, their eyes searching for answers. "What will you do?" one voice echoed, "when confronted with a truth that challenges everything you hold dear?" In the heart of the marketplace, the air was thick with apprehension and hopeful anticipation. The shadows cast by the flickering torches danced upon the cobblestones, illuminating expressions of unease, resolve, and possibility. Eyes met in silent communion, as each person wrestled with the weight of understanding and the enormity of choice. The elder who had sparked the discussion now looked deeply troubled, both by the significance of the scroll and the implications of their impending trials. "Tell me," he called out, "if our choices are indeed powerful, how can we ensure they align with the will of the divine? What if we choose poorly?" The figure in the robe, his voice calm and measured, responded anew, "The journey to wisdom is fraught with uncertainty. Yet, even in folly, the sincere heart can find its way. The scriptures whisper to you from ages past there is always a way back to righteousness." He paused, letting the weight of his words linger in the air. This. Murmurs of uncertainty filled the space once more. A merchant, whose hands were calloused from labor, stepped forward. "But how do we know what is righteous? In a world divided by deceit and ambition, isn't truth a fleeting illusion?" The crowd leaned in, as if to catch a flicker of insight from the burdened soul. "Truth is indeed elusive, yet it is not absent," the robe-clad man responded, his gaze searching for connection. "In your hearts lies a beacon, a guiding star, but it often lies obscured beneath layers of fear and desire. Do not look only to those who claim authority. Emulate the yearning for wisdom. Seek solace in prayer, in community, and in silence, where the whispers of the divine can reach you." As the crowd considered this, the woman with the scroll felt an ache in her spirit. She had come forward to be a vessel of hope, yet now she pondered her own purpose. And if we find ourselves in conflict with one another, how do we reconcile our differing paths? Her voice trembled slightly, reflecting the turmoil around her. A young man, emboldened by her courage, stood up and said, "Perhaps our differing paths are still part of a greater design. If we are to confront the shadows as one people, shouldn't we find strength in our diversity?" Nods of agreement rippled through the assembly, igniting a glimmer of shared purpose. The figure in the robe acknowledged the sentiment. Indeed, it is the multitude of voices and experiences that create the full symphony of existence. Unity does not require uniformity. Each note, played from its own key, can create a melody most profound. Yet, harmony demands effort. It requires listening, understanding, and an open heart. As the crowd took in this notion, a distant storm rumbled again, louder now, echoing their inner turmoil. The winds shifted, carrying with them an unsettling sensation of anticipation and change. The marketplace, once a simple gathering of daily life, had transformed. It was now a battleground for the spirits caught between fate and free will. An elderly woman, whose eyes had witnessed countless seasons, raised her voice with unexpected strength. I have seen empires rise and fall. Perhaps isn't the heart of the matter love? If we strive to act in love, how can we go astray? It is when we forget our compassion that we invite strife into our lives. As silence enveloped the gathering once more, a collective recognition washed over them. What if love was indeed the missing key, the true thread binding their diverse lives together in the tapestry of destiny? The figure in the robe smiled gently. Then let love guide your choices. In every action, ask not what fears divide you, but how love can unite you. The paths before you may be fraught with difficulty, but your heart's resolve can light the way. As the crowd began to understand the sort of unity they might forge, the ominous rumbling returned, momentarily overshadowing their thoughts. An unresolved tension lingered like a storm cloud in their minds. Would their collective choice to pursue love bear fruit in a time of trial, or would it merely echo into the void, swallowed by fate? What if the very essence of their struggle lies not solely in the confrontation with each other, but with the deeper conflict within themselves? Was it enough to choose love, or did greater challenges await on their paths? As the marketplace buzzed with murmurs and newfound clarity, the figure in the robe felt the weight of the tension in the air. He understood that the winds of change were not only raging outside but were also stirring within the hearts of those gathered. They were at a precipice. The choices they were about to make carried the weight of generations before them. Gather close, he called out, his voice rising above the anxious whispers, for the night brings not just shadow, but the opportunity to uncover deeper truths. The scrolls speak of a time when the descendants of Abraham were blessed, yet also challenged. Remember, the promise was not just to one lineage but to many. His words held a resonance, sparking faint glimmers of recognition among the crowd. An older man, his face lined with the creases of many years, raised a trembling finger. Is it not written that strife began with the very descendants of Sarah and Hagar? Do we not see the conflict rooted in the stories of old? How do we rise above what has been set before us? Ah, the robe-clad figure replied, a fire in his eyes. To embrace the past is wisdom, but it is the heart of the present that holds the key to the future. Know this, the struggle for inheritance is an illusion. It is the spirit of unity that must inherit the earth. Love and grace must intermingle in this soil that you call home. As he spoke, the winds surged violently, abruptly sending a flurry of dust swirling around them. A young girl with eyes wide in wonder asked timidly, but how can we love our enemies? Isn't that asking too much? Compassion flickered in the man's gaze as he knelt to her level. Listen closely, child. Love isn't merely a feeling. It is a practice. It begins with understanding oneself and recognizing that everyone carries their own burdens. Each person you see is shaped by their history, just as you are. What would it take to see each other as reflections of our shared humanity? A collective deep breath swept through the assembly, yet doubts lingered. An artisan deftly crafting pottery asked, and what if that understanding is not enough? What if our enemies do not seek the same end? How do we confront not just those who oppose us, but also the very evils that threaten to unravel our peace? In response, the figure's voice softened. In confronting the darkness, the light that you each carry must shine more brightly. Remember, it is not the absence of conflict that defines unity, but how you choose to rise above it. The path of peace will always demand sacrifice, courage, and above all, faith. Yet, let me share this, within the scroll lies a prophecy. It speaks of a great reconciler who will come to the people, a healer who will guide the many branches of the divine family toward unity. Perhaps you are called not only to hope for this figure, but to embody the principles they represent: compassion, justice, and love. The crowd paused, their hearts turning over his words, though hope was mingled with doubt. A recent father, cradling his infant, spoke with urgency. If we look to a future reconciler, what if it never arrives? Must we not be the hands that mend, the voices that call for peace? The figure nodded gravely. Indeed, the time is upon you, but to be the embodiment of healing invites vulnerability. It requires you to seek the truth within your own hearts first before you can offer it to others. The very act of loving those you consider enemies unveils a greater challenge within those you love enough to change the narrative. As the air stirred heavier with these revelations, the crowd felt the palpable tension twice as fierce. What if they were indeed the ones they had been waiting for? Could they summon the strength to transform love into action amidst their differences, forging a path that had not been seen before? The storm clouds roiling above mirrored the swirling questions now embedded deep within their spirits. Would their choice to embody love amidst conflicts of the heart offer further illumination, or would darkness continue to overshadow their intentions? The unclear horizon stretched out before them, a testament to the mystery of what lay ahead. As the tempest continued to roar outside, swirling around them like the very questions that besieged their hearts, the gathered assembly held their breath. Each eye was fixed on the figure in the robe, their collective silence begging him to elucidate the dark crevices of their histories that now weighed so heavily upon their futures. Listen again, he urged gently, to the stories that have shaped you. In these accounts lies a rich tapestry woven with both discord and harmony. Reflect on the children of Abraham, the brothers who, from the same father, were torn apart by conflict yet bound by blood. Do you not see how their struggle echoes through the ages? Often, it is not the heritage of such divisions that defines you but the choice to transcend them. An elder among the crowd, shaking with age and emotion, spoke up, but despite our efforts to understand one another, the pains of betrayal and hatred seep deep into our bones. How is it we break free from a chain that holds us captive? Is there hope for reconciliation? The figure straightened, the weight of prophecy filling the air. Hope abounds, dear elder, but it hides behind the veil of collective understanding. You must acknowledge both sides of the story, the suffering endured and the transgressions made. It is a dual journey. The healing of relationships cannot occur without a shared commitment to face the truth of what has been. But what if that truth is too painful? A voice quaked from the back. It was a woman cradling her child, reflection clouding her eyes. What if our bitterness spills over, poisoning generations yet to come? At times, the truth may sting like a wound, he countered softly, but the sunlight that enters through such a crack can heal. That is the essence of love in action. You have the agency to rewrite the narrative of your ancestors not through silence but through dialogue, forgiveness, and acts of kindness. When you choose love, you honor and acknowledge the past while paving the road ahead. As he spoke, the atmosphere brightened momentarily, like a fleeting ray of sun piercing through the clouds. Yet, the doubt lingered, a weight that threatened to suffocate their hopes. A youth, restless with questions, stepped forward. But if the power structures remain unchallenged, how can our voices resonate? Can unity truly emerge from such oppression? Ah, young one, the figure replied, his gaze penetrating deeply. The force of change often begins as a whisper. It is found in the small actions, your hands that weave compassion into your trade, your willingness to listen to another's sorrow rather than silencing it with your own. Seek out the common ground even among those who have wronged you. When the heart aligns with purpose, mountains can shift. A flicker of understanding flickered in the eyes of some. But still, the tempest raged outside, each clap of thunder echoing the tumult within. An older woman's voice trembled through the tension. And what if we fail? What if our attempt at reconciliation yields nothing but more pain? The figure stood resolute. Failure holds lessons as profound as success. Each step you take toward love must be tempered with humility and patience. For the journey of the reconciler is not one of ease. It is fraught with challenges, and yet every time you respond with love over bitterness, you disarm the adversary lurking within. The crowd began to pulse with energy, the heaviness lightening ever so slightly as the seed of courage was planted. And yet, beneath it all, a gnawing uncertainty remained as a sacred question lingered in the air. Could they muster the courage to extend themselves for love's sake, to forge connections that could defy the legacies of conflict still haunting their paths? With hearts open to possibility yet heavy with the weight of history, they faced a future veiled in both hope and trepidation. Where would their chosen path lead them as they grappled with the intertwining destinies of their peoples? Would their collective action birth the healing they so fervently sought, or would the shadows of enmity triumph once more? As the storm winds howled around the assembly, a profound silence settled into the hearts of those gathered. Each individual stood on the precipice of a decision, a choice that tugged at the very fabric of their beings. The figure in the robe, still reflecting the light of the divine within him, seemed to sense the weight that hung in the air, a confluence of history and hope, pain and possibility. "Dear ones," he began, his voice resonating deeply, "the struggle you face is not merely yours. It is a thread in the larger narrative that weaves through the ages. Do you not recall? There were once two nations, born of the same promise, yet driven apart by misunderstanding and strife. Look to Isaac and Ishmael, the children of that covenant, each enduring their own trials. In their separation lay lessons about grace, acceptance, and the sacred nature of life itself." The elder, still visibly moved, closed his eyes momentarily. "But how do we reconcile their story with our own? Times have changed, yet the bitterness remains. We seem trapped in an unbroken cycle of anger. What then can be learned from their paths?" The figure leaned closer, urgency brewing in his tone. "It is through acknowledgement and a willingness to see beyond the surface that healing begins. They bore the weight of conflict, yet they also embodied the potential for reunion. The narratives of Isaac and Ishmael, while steeped in rivalry, also present models of coexistence against a backdrop of struggle. When they finally acknowledged one another, it became a moment of profound humility and understanding." A youth with fiery eyes interjected, "But how can we trust in such a reconciliation when trust itself has been severed by countless betrayals and unheeded promises? Can we dare to believe in a peace that feels forever elusive?" "Ah, my young friend," the figure replied gently, "trust is a fragile seed that sprouts only when nourished through truth and sincerity. It requires the courage to be vulnerable, the willingness to reveal one's wounds, and the humility to listen deeply. Remember, healing is a journey shared. It cannot exist in isolation from one's community. It relies on a collective commitment to turn towards one another, even when it feels daunting." The crowd began to resonate with the weight of his words, a flicker of recognition igniting in their hearts. However, shadows of doubt lingered, as a murmuring voice emerged from the throng. "But what if our healing sparks a greater conflict? What if, in our effort to reconcile, we open Pandora's box of past grievances? Shall we not instead protect ourselves from the hurt of a deeper wound?" In response, the figure paused, allowing the heavy questions to settle before him. To heal is not to forget. It is to face the brokenness with grace. Yes, the process may bring forth pain that has long been buried. Yet, confronting that pain fortifies the spirit, hinting at a resurrection of hope that can transform even the most fragile communities. It is in this vulnerable space of dialogue that the divine can work, where hearts reawaken to the rhythm of empathy and understanding. An elder woman, who had remained silent, finally spoke, her voice barely breaking through the tumultuous storm outside. "And yet, are we not simply human? If love is indeed the answer, how can we serve such a lofty ideal amidst the fears and anger that rage as fiercely as the tempest?" The figure responded with warmth, "Indeed, you are human, fraught with flaws. Yet, therein lies the beauty of this divine call to embrace that vulnerability. It is the courage to love amidst fear that truly transforms hearts and bridges divides. Remember the words of the ancients. Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. When you embody these truths, your actions ripple through the ages. Like the peaceful storm that follows the tempest, so too can peace reign in a heart that chooses love." As he spoke, the skies above them seemed to ease, the thunder replaced by a gentle rain, a cleansing, a renewal. The assembly held their breath, contemplating whether they could summon such profound love and bravery, particularly when history bore heavy upon them. With swirling thoughts and unsettled hearts, they stood at a crossroads, grappling with a timeless choice. Could they embrace the call to connect, to heal, to love one another despite the historical scars? Would the legacy of their ancestors be a shackle, or could it transform into a bridge to unity? The questions loomed like the clouds overhead, heavy, dark, but ultimately pregnant with the possibility of a different dawn. As the first rays of dawn broke through the retreating clouds, casting a soft golden light on the assembly, The tension that had been thick as fog began to dissipate. Each individual stood before their own internal tempest, wrestling with doubts but also feeling the flicker of possibility ignite within. The figure in the robe, radiant and resolute, gazed upon them, sensing the awakening of their spirits. "Listen closely, beloved," he urged, his voice a melodic guide through the uncertain terrain of their thoughts. "For every story carries within it a seed of understanding, waiting to bloom. Just as Isaac and Ishmael found their way back to one another, so too can you find the threads that connect your stories in the fabric of human experience." A man in the back raised his hand. "What if in trying to connect we only reopen old wounds? Is there wisdom in walking away from our past rather than confronting it?" The figure regarded him with deep compassion. "The temptation to retreat is strong, yet remember, to ignore the past is to deny its impact upon the present. Confrontation does not signify violence. It is a testament to the courage to acknowledge history without allowing it to dictate your future. Look to your own hearts. Are you not often your harshest critics? The process of reconciliation begins not in erasing the past, but in integrating its lessons into your lives." A young woman, trembling yet determined, spoke up next. "But can there ever be forgiveness for the pains inflicted by generations? Can mere words heal the scars, or must we act against the currents of our history to prove our sincerity?" "Forgiveness is not an act, dear one. It is a journey," he replied gently. "It requires intention and the cultivation of a heart willing to embrace vulnerability. Words have power, yes, but it is through actions, those transformative acts of kindness, that the true fabric of forgiveness is woven. Consider the parables of old. Even the prodigal son found his way home not just through words, but through the love that awaited him." A wave of murmurs cascaded through the crowd, reflecting uncertainty, yet also the urge to explore. They were grappling with the question of approaching forgiveness not as a passive act, but as a deliberate mindset cultivated through consistent caring and patience. The figure continued, sensing the shifting tide of hope among them. "Remember the story of Joseph, cast into the pit by his brothers, yet later rising to become a source of salvation for them. His path wasn't devoid of struggle. It was marked by suffering, yet he chose to extend grace. The tensions that bind you today are not insurmountable, for what lays beneath is a yearning to belong, to be understood, to be seen. Even as the storm rages, trust that the divine breathes life into the possibilities that lie ahead." As the winds swirled gently around Thema, stark contrast to the tumultuous night, there was a collective inhalation, an intuitive grasping of the profound nature of their journey. Yet, even amidst burgeoning hope, one voice broke through again, timid yet persistent. "We seek understanding. Yet what if the opposing narratives are so entrenched they can never align? If we don't see a common story, how can we bridge this chasm?" The figure hesitated, contemplating the breadth of their concerns before addressing them with utmost reverence. "Therein lies another divine mystery. Each narrative holds a kernel of truth, yet truth can be multifaceted. Through humility and compassion, seek not only to declare your own story but also to listen. Each perspective brings you closer to the tapestry of the whole. It is in listening where you may discover the exquisite beauty of overlapping experiences." Silence hung in the air, heavy and expectant. The assembly, swayed by the gravity of their exploration, felt the weight of their shared history intertwined with their hopes. Yet, an unsettling realization dawned. For all their yearning for connection, could they navigate the churning waters of contradiction and division? As the sun climbed higher, illuminating their faces with warmth, the assembly stood before an uncharted path. Would they dare bridge the divides that had been cemented by time, position their common humanity above lingering grievances, and embark on a new narrative together? The winds whispered with the urgency of a question still lingering in the air, one that summoned them toward transformation. Could they, against the backdrop of their histories, forge a new story that embraced reconciliation and healing? As the sun ascended to its zenith, the light cast long shadows on the ground where the assembly stood. The golden rays danced among the trees, yet the profound weight of their discussion lingered like an invisible mantle. The figure in the robe surveyed the crowd, noticing their collective uncertainty and quiet contemplation. Fear not the shadows that lie before you, he intoned softly, for it is in darkness that the light is most cherished. Just as the dawn brings clarity after the night, so too must you journey through the depths of your discord to find unity on the other side. As he spoke, a woman clasped her hands over her heart, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. But what if the darkness reveals truths we cannot bear? What if the journey leads us only to deeper rifts rather than healing? In the moments of despair, the figure replied with a steady gaze, the soul often encounters its truest self. Fear, while a powerful force, can also be a catalyst for growth. What if I told you that not all truths are meant to wound, but rather to awaken? Just as the prophet Hosea taught, God's love encompasses even the most wayward of hearts. A murmur rose among the assembly, a ripple of recognition weaving through their ranks. The young woman stepped forward, emboldened by the warmth of his words. So we are meant to confront our truths, even the painful ones. Indeed, he affirmed. The stories of your ancestors did not conclude neatly. They are narratives enriched by struggles and resolve. Each wound can be a testament to learning, not just pain. Embrace your journeys, for they lead to empathy, the bridge built from understanding each other's past. Not just your OWNS. The assembly reflected on the notion of shared suffering. An elder man, weathered yet wise, raised his voice. You speak of empathy as a means toward reconciliation. Yet what of the land between us, so fiercely contested and stained by blood? How can we find common ground in a place where generations have faced strife? The figure paused, his gaze sweeping across the landscape, its beauty marred by the remnants of conflict. The land is not merely soil that you tread upon. It is imbued with the stories of countless souls who have sought their belonging. To nurture understanding requires recognizing the sanctity of that land, for all learning to honor the dreams that reside within each heart. Even if those dreams have manifested in division, as an echo of shared grief reverberated through the assembly. A younger man interjected, what if our truths are so disparate, we can never coexist? Are we doomed to perpetuate the cycle of conflict? Therein lies the crux of your journey. The heart has the capacity to transcend seemingly insurmountable divides. The figure said, his voice steady yet imbued with compassion. Consider the story of Ruth, a Moabite woman who chose to remain steadfast beside Naomi during the turbulence of their grief. She, too, dwelled in the in-between, yet her loyalty transcended her past and transformed destinies. With each tale woven from the annals of history, the assembly began to grasp that within their shared narratives lay numerous pathways to understanding. Yet still, doubt flickered like a dim candle flame, uncertain of its strength amid the growing shadows. Would it be enough? The trembling woman whispered. Could we forge a path where love overcomes our divisions? Or are we fated to the gravitational pull of our histories? Ah, my beloved, he replied slowly, a glimmer of hope dancing in his eyes. Even the mightiest storms can be calmed, not by sheer force but through gentle grace. The very act of seeking to understand opens doors that despair once sealed. The journey toward reconciliation will not be swift. It requires tenacity, faith, and love, qualities that must be nourished like tender saplings growing through the cracks of the pavement. As the sun began its slow descent, the assembly stood on the precipice of change, yet the sense of uncertainty still pervaded. The profound question echoed in their hearts. Could they, fueled by the stories of the past, dare to believe in the possibility of a new tomorrow, one where compassion weaved stronger than division, and their lives formed a narrative of unity among enduring differences? With the last light of day slipping beyond the horizon, shadows deepened across the assembly's gathering space. The air was thick with tension and unspoken fears, an echo of countless conflicts etched into the very land they stood upon. The figure in the robe remained a steady presence, offering a calm amid the storm of emotions swirling around him. Tell me, he urged gently, what shadows lurk in your hearts? What truths remain unspoken, binding you in a chokehold of doubt and division? One voice, trembling, broke through the silence. The hatred runs deep, a man said, his hands clenched tightly at his sides. We have been taught to see our enemies in each other's faces. How can we tear down walls we've built for generations? The figure nodded with understanding, for he recognized the challenge that lay before them. Perception is a powerful architect of division, yet to understand a rival is to render them less a foe and more a mirror of one's own fears. As the elders say, an enemy is often a friend at war. This. A woman stepped forward, her voice rising above the murmurs. But what of justice? Is it not our right to demand restitution for the wrongs we have suffered? Does that not pit us against one another in this very struggle? Justice, indeed, weighs heavy upon the soul, the figure replied, his voice a soothing balm to the fray of thoughts. Yet, do you not recall the story of David and Saul? David sought to avenge the wrongs done to him, and yet, he chose mercy in the face of hostility. There lies the wisdom of restraint, where seeking healing often brings forth a more enduring peace. The crowd shifted, uncertainty flickering in their eyes as they pondered this radical approach. But mercy sounds weak, a younger man protested. How can we afford to be merciful when our rights are constantly trampled upon? Do we not risk being silenced? Consider this, the figure countered, his eyes sweeping over the assembly once more. What if true strength lies not in domination but in the unwillingness to perpetuate cycles of violence? Strength is found in vulnerability, in the willingness to listen, and in the courage to understand rather than to judge. A heavy sigh echoed among them, as if a collective breath had been held too long. The notion of rising through understanding felt like a fragile thread, easily snappable. Yet among the complexity of emotions, anger, sorrow, yearning, a shift began to spark curiosity. I long to believe such paths exist, said the woman who had initially questioned, her voice soft yet resolute. But how do we begin to mend the fabric of trust when it has been so extensively torn? The figure considered her words intently. Begin with simple threads, he advised. Share your stories. They hold the power to connect and transform. Allow your pain to be heard and your joys to be celebrated. In the intricacy of each story lies the potential for a shared future. No matter how distant it appears, as dusk unfurled into evening, the vibrant colors of the sunset gave way to the cool tones of twilight. The assembly appeared to wrestle with this idea, the threads of individual lives intertwining in their collective consciousness. Yet, as the shadows settled around them and the first stars began to twinkle in the vast expanse of the night sky, a lingering doubt remained unaddressed. Could the power of narrative truly serve as the remedy for centuries of division and distrust? Would the scars of the past allow for the new stories they were ready to weave together? The figure watched, contemplative, as they each pondered the path ahead. In the silence that enveloped the assembly, the question hung palpably in the air. How fragile is the balance between holding onto our histories and daring to create a new legacy? Under the glow of the stars, the air crackled with a mixture of anticipation and dread, a palpable reminder of the trials yet to come. The crowd, a mosaic of weary faces, turned their gaze towards the figure in the robe, whose presence shone like a beacon in the night. The time had come, he sensed, for a revelation that would ripple through the very fabric of their identities. Listen closely, he began, his voice steady as the heavens themselves. For the moment has arrived not merely to reflect on your past but to ignite the flame of transformation in your hearts. Before us lies a divine invitation, a chance to embrace the power of choice and to shift the narratives that have held you captive. As he spoke, an ethereal light enveloped the assembly, casting warmth upon their mixed emotions. Each of you stands at a crossroads, he continued. The choices you make do not simply affect your lives. They echo throughout the ages. No longer are you bound by the legacies of anger and division. You possess the opportunity to claim a new story, one woven with understanding and love. Among the crowd, the woman with the scroll felt her heartbeat quicken. She had journeyed far with her fears and hopes, and now fate seemed to unfurl before her. But how? She cried, desperation soaring in her chest. How do we ignite this change amid the shadows that threaten to consume us? The figure smiled gently, witnessing the yearning in her eyes. Let me tell you a truth about shadows. They fear the light. Darkness cannot exist where love shines bright. Your choice to act in love even in facing the harshest realities will reshape your world. The scroll you hold is not just a record of the past. It is a promise of possibility. The winds shifted as if in agreement, and the crowd leaned closer, drawn in by the magnetic pulse of his words. The elder, whose brow glittered with the weight of wisdom, stepped forward. But love can be a daunting path, fraught with challenges. How do we summon the strength to choose it repeatedly, especially when faced with the echoes of betrayal? Ah, dear elder, the figure replied, a spark of energy igniting in his voice. True strength lies not in the absence of struggle but in the willingness to embrace it. Love invites vulnerability, and that is where your courage will flourish. It is in the giving of yourselves, in the humble act of empathy, that the walls between you will crumble. As the assembly absorbed this sentiment, a young man, emboldened by the fervor of hope, raised his hands. What if we falter? What if our attempts at love lead only to more pain? Then you will learn, the figure affirmed, a certainty reverberating in his every word. Mistakes are but steps on the path of wisdom. Through each misstep, you will uncover new truths, learning not just about each other but about your own hearts. Remember the children of Abraham. Even through their trials, they forged paths to reconciliation. Your bravery to love can change the course of generations. The crowd fell into a thoughtful hush as contemplation washed over them. They began to look within, the glimmers of hope igniting like small flames against the backdrop of pain. A voice broke through the stillness, a solemn woman who had buried her family's grievances. And what if our wounds are too deep to heal? Can we truly reunite with those who have wronged us? By embracing your wounds openly, you impart the very strength that can move even the most obstinate of divides, he replied, leaning into the weight of her question. Acknowledge them, but do not let them define you. Each heart bears scars, yet in sharing them lies the sacred ripple of vulnerability and connection. With each heartfelt revelation, the energy in the air shifted, transforming doubt into shared resolve. The realization that they collectively held the power to shape their future ignited a wave of emotion through the crowd. They were no longer mere spectators in a script written long ago. They had written their first lines with each choice spoken aloud as the first rays of dawn began to paint the horizon, illuminating the somber faces of those gathered. The atmosphere transformed into one of unity. The figure looked upon them, his heart swelling with hope. Today, you are not just witnesses to old tales. You are the storytellers of a new narrative. Understand that the path will not be devoid of tribulations, but with every choice to act in love, you dismantle the very roots of conflict that hold you captive. With renewed vigor igniting their spirits, the people turned towards each other, hands reaching out in tentative gestures of understanding. In that sacred moment, a profound silence enveloped a promise of what could be, tethered by faith. Let us join our voices in this endeavor to weave a tapestry of understanding, the figure proclaimed, as the sun breathlessly rose, casting golden light upon those willing to embrace a new beginning. For within each one of you resides the ability to transcend the past, fostering a world where love triumphs over hatred and unity blossoms amidst diversity. No matter how vast the chasm, remember, you hold the power to bridge it as the dawn broke fully, painting the sky with a palette of hope and potential. Those gathered felt a palpable shift, a sense of purpose binding them as they took collective steps toward reconciliation. They embraced their stories past and present, stepping forward as architects of change, firmly rooted in love. That I end that powerful moment. Beneath the awning of infinite skies, hearts awoke to the realization that they were no longer just remnants of history but participants in a divine story, capable of leaving behind a legacy echoing through the Ezekiel legacy of hope, unity, and ultimately transformative love. The cycle would not end in despair but flourish in the promise of new beginnings.